Hello and welcome piano enthusiasts. In this video I walk you through the restoration of this Golden Age Baldwin Model L, 6'3", made in Cincinnati in 1934. So it's getting up there in age. This one needed the whole job, new pinblock, strings, all new action. It was refinished as well. This was kind of a different scenario. The customer actually commissioned me to restore it and sell it. He went on the search for his forever piano, and he is a Baldwin lover, and he knew he wanted this model, a Baldwin L. So he actually looked at this piano first, and he said he liked how it played, but there were obviously tuning stability issues, especially in the bass. Just the piano wasn't holding the tune, and he could tell that the pins had been super glued or something in the past. But anyway, so he said thanks for your time and passed on the piano, and found a second Baldwin L that he ended up purchasing and scheduled the pickup. And in the meantime, this lady actually called him back and said, "Hey, if you don't buy it, it's going to the dump." So he said, "You know what? I really don't want to see this piano go to the dump." So he found my videos and found me and had it sent to me. And I said I can restore it and sell it for you. So these videos aren't really supposed to be how-to videos. It's more of I guess, a director's cut. I just set up the camera next to me and just work on it, and I just kind of talk you along with it. But so the piano had been, I'll say, repainted at some point in the past, and there's the super glue on the pens. So the finish is flaking off, and you can see this is a torque gauge. Less than 20 inch-pounds of torque. That's 60 is acceptable. 80 is good. 80 to 100 is pretty good. 100 to 120 is what they should be when they're new. So yeah, the pen block is just aged. It's getting old, so it needs to be replaced. Now I'm checking the bearing, the down bearing, and checking the crown of the soundboard. In the upper treble, I saw a little rock of the tool there. That means that the string's going up and over the bridge and then back down to the hitch pin on the other side. And the rest of the piano was kind of questionable because it was just flat. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, because the strings could still be pressing down on the board, but just, there's not a up and over motion. But it could also mean that the strings are literally pulling up on the bridge, and we definitely don't want that. So I'll have to check that when I get the plate back in it with the strings off and see what the bearing's like. And you can see some overspray on the side of the action there from when it was refinished in the past. And I'll just show you sort of some of the wear. Key bushings are loose. Those are the little felts on the bottom of the key and the center of the key that keep the keys from wobbling around. You see that black dust there on the hammer. See the grooves on the hammers. And I'll take the piano apart real quick. They put a little sticker on the bass side so you know what side it goes on. And a little soapy water gets this felt off. Normally you soak it for 10 minutes and you pull it right off, but sometimes it's not the case. I mark the treble side of the hinge so I don't put the hinge on upside down when I put it back together. Yeah, the hinge pins for the lid there. One of them was missing, and the other one was uh, broken. That was loose, and so when they refinished it, they got a lot of the screws back in the wrong spot. So I had to, some screws have a rounded top, and some screws have a flat top, and it just takes doing, a couple dozen of these to know where the screws go. And I take a picture of that tie. That's the only string tie that I got to remember. Take out the strings. It's funny, when I first started, stringing pianos, I would take the tuning pins out by hand. Now we're not saving the block in this case, so it really doesn't matter how you take them out. But my boss at the time would say, well, Jake, never take those tuning pins out with an electric drill, because it'll wear the drill out. It'll wear the motor out. And maybe early electric drills that was the case, but I'm probably on piano number 50 with with that drill. So it is, on older pianos, when the torque isn't that high, it's not that hard for the drill. But if you're restringing, say, a piano down in Florida where the strings are rusty, but the piano's only 20 years old or something, then yeah, the torque would be a lot higher. It'd be a lot harder for the drill. So yeah, now we're going to take the plate out. These are some of the guys building the new barn on our property. New piano shop. That's what it looks like when the piano's taken apart. And I'll get a guide here for the pen block, so we can keep the alignment of the plate. Front, back, left, right. And I'll get a template for the new block. It's probably time to invest in one of those roller, things you put beside your table saw or saw to catch the board on its way out. This little notch here, I'll get that with the reciprocating saw. There's a little cove to cut here with the router. Now I'll start to, you got to fit the block. It has to fit the flange really well. So I'll put a little bit of chalk on the cast iron plate back there, and the high spots will make themselves known when you kind of pound. Yeah. So I'll grind down the spots where the pen block is touching. So I just do that about, 2-3 dozen times until I get solid blue across the whole block. And this ensures tuning stability. And you see good coverage. What you don't want is like a foot-long gap, of no chalk, because that means that the block isn't supported there. Roll that back out of the way. Yeah, my time in the detached garage is coming to an end as we get the new shop up and going. So this was kind of a temporary shop. And, you know, the laser, it took off the black really well, but whatever primer coat they used, it was not working. The laser works really well on original finishes, lacquer, shellac. Um, but when there's some sort of catalyzed primer, or I don't know if it's an epoxy primer, and especially the lighter color, it reflects the wavelength of the light back, and it doesn't get absorbed by the material. Um, so it was faster in this case just to sand it off, and in these parts, you know, those um, parts where I couldn't fit the sander in, I just used the chemical stripper. And yeah, I put a hour counter there. um, Time from stripping just the piano body to the first coats of primer is about 8 hours. So normally, if I'm stripping a piano with the laser, it takes 10 to 12 hours to do the piano and all the parts. If it's an original finish. And these are the regional movers, A1 over in Dayton, Ohio. Um, they were here actually picking up another Baldwin L that I sold to a church in Cincinnati, but they were actually on their way to Andre Watts, the pianist, passed away, and he had a couple pianos that that the movers went and picked up for the dealer on the north side here to sell on, for the estate. And I actually was in the showroom when I worked at that dealer when he picked out those pianos. And he's a Steinway artist, but neither of them were Steinways, so I'll just put it that way. These are the new adjustable plate perimeter bolts, because I don't know if you saw the old ones were really warped. It just shows you how much tension those bolts are under. So yeah, the regional movers are in my shop probably maybe once a month or so. This piano came from North Carolina. And I'm just putting the guide screws in so the plate is secure before I mark all the holes for the tuning pins. Oh, hello. So now I'll steam out these are the key bushings. You see that little divot in the middle, that's where it rides up and down the rail pin. And with a lot of use, those wear out. So I'll steam out the old ones and glue in new ones. It takes about 45 minutes to steam them all out. And I'll get measurements of the pins so I can make sure I have the right thickness of cloth for the new cloth. And the caul, C-A-U-L, that brass piece there, is 150 thousandths of an inch. When you put it in with the cloth, it should be a little snug. You should be able to tip the key upside down and it not fall out, but it shouldn't be, you shouldn't have to really jam it in there. It shouldn't be too tight. And then you see that overspray. So I'll clean up the keys a little bit with the laser. Yeah, the laser, a lot of people, and I mean, myself included, when before I bought it, thought I was hoping it would be a magic tool. It would just do everything. But I mean, it definitely comes in handy. But it's another tool. It doesn't do everything. It works on original finishes, but it doesn't work on white paint. It doesn't work that well on catalyzed, urethanes or anything. So finishes that dry, as opposed to finishes that cure, it works well on. But I use it every day for something. I mean, whether it's just for a little brass piece that I'll show you at different points in the video. And then back to the key bushings. After they're glued in, then I size the felt, so it's the perfect thickness. The front rail, they say between 2 and 5 thousandths of wiggle room, and then the center rail should be between 0 and 2 thousandths of clearance. And I'll box the keys up. It didn't really come across on camera. Well, I think in the first few pictures that you saw, but the white keys were just kind of dingy looking. So, and they had been replaced in the past. Originally, they would have been ivory. But old plastic, it just doesn't hold up very well. Whatever formula they were using. And these are the action brackets. So I just clean those up and spray them just to look pretty, even though nobody's going to see them. And the finish, it'll be a closed grain, traditional American piano finish. So you won't see the grain in the wood. I'll replace the felts on these let-off buttons. Put those little lead weights on there, jiffy weights, to clamp those on. Wait for that to dry, just do something else. I'm just going back and forth as one coat's drying. These are the new whippings, repetitions. And I'll glue on the heels in the right spot. The black key repetition heels are 2 millimeters taller than the white key repetition heels. So I lined them all up so I could just grab one and go instead of picking one out of the bag and trying to remember, did I do this one? Did I do that one? That's the first coat of satin black on top. that's drying, I'll glue the rest of those on. And we decided to go with the Wessell nickel and gross carbon composite action components. They're really nice. So usually I have to make a little clearance cut for. They're a slightly different profile. It's for strength and mass reduction. So I just take a few millimeters off there to so that doesn't rub on anything. And then here's another case for the laser. When they refinished it, they got black inside the casters, and that was really hard to get out. Um, Another story with the Scotch-Brite pad and inside the caster there. I was working at the piano dealer for like it was like 2 months in, and mostly I was doing cleaning, a lot of machining brass, just like this. And I was like, well, I'll just stick this in here, and as the wheel is turning it, and that'll clean it. And my boss came out, and his mouth was kind of hanging open, and I don't know if he was accusing me of like, or if he was just dumbfounded that I would come up with it on my own. But he goes, Jake, how did you know how to do that? Just like real serious. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, where did you learn that? I was like, well, I just figured I'd put the Scotch-Brite. Apparently, it's some kind of trade secret that nobody's supposed to know about. But I mean, it just seemed kind of obvious to me. But so that was a funny story. So now I'll get the plate ready. Yeah, when I got my start, I got my start at a dealer on the north side of Indianapolis, big piano store. Kind of right as they were phasing out big restorations, I guess. But I started mainly doing a lot of cleaning, polishing brass, pedals, that sort of thing, and then a lot of key leveling, basic regulation. I didn't touch a tuning hammer for like 2 years because they had several tuners come in and out. Um, and I did a lot of like the detailing prep, the cleaning, and I learned a little bit of touch up there. And so these dampers were giving me a fit because I sprayed a coat and that coat just kind of bubbled up. So there's something on those dampers. So I had to clean it back off and spray it with a barrier coat of shellac. A lot of times the mice can get in and kind of scooch their bottom across the damper heads, and it kind of impregnates it into the wood. It doesn't come out, so it's kind of like pledge or something. Silicone gets into the wood, and you can strip it and finish over it, but it'll still give you a fisheye. So usually a barrier coat of shellac or like a vinyl sealer or something traps that, so the top coat doesn't bubble up. So yeah, you saw me. I use a little formula scoop. um, Usually half a formula scoop per quart is a good to put the bronzing powder in the lacquer. That's what it looks like right after it's sprayed. So it still looks wet, but it'll dry flat. Like it won't be super shiny. And I gave the piano a warm nap, dry out the soundboard. So those it was funny in the in the pictures you sent me, you only saw the one big crack, the one long crack. But once you take the strings off, it releases the tension, and then you dry the board, and that further dries it out, and the cracks open up further, and you'll see a bunch more cracks opened up. So. And these kind of cracks are almost entirely cosmetic, as long as the board is glued down to the ribs well. You're still getting uh, good transfer of the sound across the board. Transduction, I think that's the technical term. And there's two sides to that soundboard shimming tool there. If you pull it, it removes material, and if you push it, it compresses the fibers of the wood. So my goal here was to compress the fibers of the wood before putting the shim in. So in the event that the board would get super dry, dangerous low humidity, instead of the board cracking right at that shim or the material, that compressed material would have some leeway, some give to it, so it wouldn't just crack back open. And I use it's an epoxy putty. It only gets down maybe a third, half of the way through, and then I flip the piano upside down and fill the crack from the underside, so it's a complete fill of the crack. And fill in more dents and dings on the legs. And it's I was showing you putting these parts in the ultrasonic cleaner. It's a lot easier to machine these parts when there's not a thick coat of lacquer on them. So it just goes a lot quicker. And a lot of these hinges had some serious scratches in them, like super deep. So I left everything machined looking, because if I tried to polish them, I would have to sand out through a third of the thickness of the of the hinges to get out the scratches, and at some point you're compromising the integrity of the hinge. But what's interesting is when people see the machined brass look, they have the reaction of, well, where did you find the new brass? Where did you find those ferrules, those hinges? And then when they see the polished look, they say, wow, those are so beautiful. But when they see the machine look, they just assume they're new. So it's kind of a distinction. And I guess it's up to you whether you want just what look you want. But doing enough of these, it probably wouldn't have looked the best if they were polished as opposed to machined. And I put a clear coat on over everything so the brass doesn't tarnish in a few years. And I kept all these in order because in the past I forgot to keep those in order on prior projects, and I was like, does this go here? I think it goes here. Yeah, just replacing all these stringing felts on the plate, putting these rear duplex pieces back in. Yeah, this is one thing that I guess there's a few things that makes a, quote, golden age piano. It's kind of a marketing term, I guess. An Adirondack spruce soundboard, and this piano's got an Adirondack spruce soundboard. The tuned rear duplex, A-graphs through the, up through the tenor to the treble, vertically laminated bridges, um, all maple rim. So there's a lot of things. Um, what makes a great piano a great piano? That this piano's got all those things. And then I'll put this in. I forgot to hit the record button when I sprayed a clear coat over that. But I kind of scuffed that up a little bit so it sticks better. And I'll put the new A-graphs. It's quicker to replace them than to clean them all and like rebore the holes so you get a smooth tuning experience. Older pianos with kind of rough A-graphs, like where the string goes through the hole, you'll move when you're tuning the piano. You'll move the pen, you'll move your tuning hammer, move it, keep moving it, and nothing will happen, and then all of a sudden it'll jump like 30 cents, sharp or flat. So the goal is when you make tiny movements of the tuning hammer, the string follows you. The string renders all the way, over the felt through the A-graph. And there I just filled the bottom of those cracks with some cyanoacrylate glue or super glue. And the right pedal was really misshapen where you put your foot. It was just kind of ground down. So I tried to order just the right pedal, but had to buy all three. So these are old. These are actually Baldwin stock. So. And yeah, they part me, but a lot the old refinisher too. I've got a lot of overspray on all the underparts, so I'll just clean up all those parts, clean up the bottom of the piano, change out all the felts and leathers and things while I'm here. And the keytops came back. That's one thing I send out is the keys for new keytops because I don't have the jigs for those. And the person I send those to does a fantastic job. That's all she does is key work. So. And put everything back on. Got this nifty little grabber screwdriver. It grabs onto the flat head or the slot in there. So you're not trying to hold on to that screw at the same time. Yeah, a lot of tools there. The hole punch is important. Trying to get all those shapes. Flip the piano back over. It's really not that heavy without the big cast iron frame in there. And I'll sand this stuff down, smooth with the soundboard. So the goal here was at the top of the soundboard to fill the cracks and a cosmetic repair to make it look good. And on the bottom of the soundboard to fill the crack and the glue so the crack doesn't get any bigger. But really, if you're conscious about the humidity, you don't want it doesn't matter how well the piano was, the soundboard was shimmed, if you routinely subject your piano to 15% humidity, having that conversation with the owner, or the buyer is important to have. About 40% is what 40% humidity is what manufacturers recommend. Once you get below 25%, that's when you start seeing soundboard cracks and loose tuning pins. You start to hear, little cracks coming from the piano across the room. It's like, what was that? And working at when I worked at the big piano store, in the winter, you would just hear all day long these little click, crack. It's just like every 15 minutes. It's like, what was that? Because they had one room that was humidified, which is kind of the middle room, and then an outside room that wasn't, in the winter. So here, I'm just checking the torque of make sure I get the right size drill bit. So I aim for about 120, maybe up to 140, because once you string the piano, and pound the tuning pins in, and wiggle the tuning pin back and forth a few times, stringing it, it comes down a little bit. So it'll probably end up around 100 when it's done. See that big spider chase me around. Didn't notice that until I saw the video. And here I'm getting the new pin block in the right spot, left and right, up and down. Or not up and down, left and right, back and forth. And you got to make sure the block is either the same size as the old block, or you can either shim the sides up or plane the block, to make sure that it's at the same level to accept the plate. And there are a lot of times where the kids were sick, so if one kid's sick, you got to keep them both home from daycare. So they just kind of trade it off every 3 weeks or so, and so just find something to do that's not smelly or something. We can all hang out in here and watch the TV. And here's where I'm checking the bearing. And I'll need to lower the plate a little bit. So here's where these perimeter bolts come in handy. And they talk about the newer than this Arkansas-made Baldwins having a, quote, floating plate. Well, it's kind of a marketing mumbo jumbo. All plates are floating. I mean, this plate is floating on those two little wooden dowels. I mean, right next to each screw. Talking to the vice president of manufacturing, when they opened that plant, they couldn't. He told me that they couldn't really figure out the bearing very well. So that's when they just poked the holes where the hitch pins were and made the AccuJust hitch pins. So they could just get the plate in and then adjust the bearing later on those AccuJust hitch pins. And Actually, he just retired. He had his own shop in Cincinnati. The the prior vice president of manufacturing at that time, and I don't know, in the 80s, 90s, maybe early 2000s. And I went over to his store and picked up a lot of kind of marketing stuff and moving related, like a J bar, and just things like that, because he was selling everything off. And I'll wrap my tools there. The heavy tools I wrap in it's a tennis racket over grip, so it's kind of grabby and cushy. Feels good on the hands, and if I drop it, it doesn't nick the plate. And I'm using all German wire, the Roslau treble wire, and the Hellerbass uh, bass strings, which sound incredible. Yeah, I don't use the American company anymore. I won't say their name out loud, but they're since their head guy, I think he retired. The quality control has gone down. When I worked at Walter up in northern Indiana, their restoration facility, they eventually just stopped using them because every set would come in and we would have to call them, okay, I need string, 4, 23, 24, 32. I mean, it was a list for every single piano because it was either the wrong size or it just didn't sound good. It rattled. So hopefully they're getting better. I mean, hopefully they've got a little bit more experience, um, and they're figuring things out. But yeah, I really like the German bass strings, and they do a fancy wrap at the end of them so they don't rattle or give you that little sizzle. So now I've bedded the keyframe. I've started the regulation process, which is the adjustment of all the moving parts. I've bedded the keyframe so the everything sits on a level surface, and then I'll level the keys here. The keys, if you look across them, they should look like a sheet of glass. They should be smooth to the touch. There shouldn't be any protruding up or down. And then you set the key dip, how far the key travels downward, just with those paper punchings underneath. And with these new parts, there's very little to do in terms of traveling and squaring, because they're so stable. And even like if I were using the best wooden components from Germany, or Japan, I would probably spend maybe 45 minutes traveling the shanks here. Um, but usually with these parts, I only have to do maybe a handful, and it takes 10-15 minutes. So it's just how well the new parts are machined, and um, the stability of wood is always, especially the first couple years after the wood is cut, it's going to move the most. So how well the wood is dried, and so with these parts you don't have to worry about that. And I didn't have to do any repinning. Even the best wooden components, when you get them, you have to repin a whole bunch of them, if not all of them. All the pivot points in the action. So yeah, there's a reason why a lot of the all Steinway schools are, when they rebuild pianos, are moving to this action, because they're so stable, and in university it's hard to keep perfect humidity year round. So it's just a no-brainer. Not to mention how incredible the piano feels and easy to control. And I've got that little string there to set the let off and drop. A lot of people have this like $3,000-$4,000 setup on their bench top to, and I've got the little string. The final adjustments have to be made in the piano anyway. So. Touch up the blow distance again. So here I'm scuffing up the shellac, and I'll spray that. I don't think I got it on the camera. We'll spray that with a clear coat of satin lacquer. We kept the original wood grain on the dampers as opposed to painting them black. It's a lot easier to do the regulation before the dampers go in because you can see everything better. A lot easier to get to things. Set the jacks to the knuckles. Here I'm doing the back checks. Put that little piece of felt in there. Originally it was that half round piece of trim. I don't know, I think those look kind of tacky, so I put the felt in there. Steinways have the felt, so I'll put the felt in. And I'll do the first chip tuning. And I usually go for about 20 to 30 cents sharp on the very first tuning because it's going to fall, a note flat anyway. So I'll just do the center string. I'll do the temperament by ear here. And my goal isn't, with the first tuning, the goal is just to get it up to the right notes. You're not going for any sort of accuracy here. I thought this was kind of funny, so I left it in. Almost done. Now I'm tuning the unisons, the outside strings, to that middle string. And another tuning real quick. Okay. Alright, now I'll start to get the dampers back in. So it starts with the damper guide rails where those wires travel through. And I'll replace the felts on the bottom of those. And I'll start to glue the felts on. I like to do them in the piano. I've done it both ways. I just like this way better for me. The A-graphs and those brass pieces and the tenor and low treble, they make it a lot easier to put the dampers in, because if it's a cheaper piano made without the A-graphs, you don't know exactly where the strings should go, and you just got to have those spaced super evenly before putting the damper felts on. Strings, when you get a note of, or a unison of three strings together. Oh, and there's a little fancy cut I made that around that damper wire. When you get three strings together, you can move those three strings left or right when you're stringing the piano. And I was getting kind of a whoosh if you've ever went to a showroom and played brand new pianos, when you press the pedal on cheaper pianos, you get this really loud whoosh. When the sound of the dampers gliding against the string as you lift all the dampers with the sustain pedal. So what you do, you just cut the bottom of the felt off so the felt is sitting on top of the strings instead of going underneath the strings. And very, very rarely do I put a sostenuto bar in, and it just works. So it was just, I don't know, the piano gods were shining down on me. Sometimes I'll have to spend a day or two just getting the sostenuto working and retiming the dampers and moving it up, down, in and out. On older Steinways, it's a little bit harder because it's attached to the back of the action as opposed to being attached to the piano. And I'm just doing some voicing of the new hammers. These are German Renner Blue Pointe hammers. And I got them pre-voiced, which means two things: that they go into the side of the felt, the shoulders, with needles, and then after they cut the hammers, they go over the felt with like a sheet sander, because when you cut the hammers, the felt kind of cups on either side, so it just saves me a step. And it's easier to do it at that point in the manufacturing process as opposed to me doing it after the hammers have already been hung on the shanks. Okay, now I'm putting the decals on. Went ahead and put this side one on, even though the previous refinisher didn't. But originally it would have had that one on the side. And I'll spray a clear coat over that so your fingernails don't rub it off. And I tried one thickness of felt, a little bit kind of a medium thickness on the bottom of that fallboard there, but when I went to close it, it was pressing down the keys, and then when you reopen it, then it catches on the back of the keytops, and it was pulling the felt off, so I had to put a thinner piece of felt on. And I'll rub all these case parts, give them that brushed look, real nice finish to it. And get all these screws back in the right spot this time. And now that I've got room, this is a small space. Once you take the piano apart, you get the plate out and the lid and the action. I mean, you're talking a few hundred square foot. So now I've got the space to refinish the lid. And that damper got glued on a little sideways. So I'll take there's a wedge felt on the front, so I took off and replaced the wedge felt. And now that the main component of the piano is done, well, I'll take that out of here so I can get some space back. I've got a little temporary showroom in the house, and my cousin there, we're spraying a couple car parts. But I've got a little showroom in the house. It's kind of a bonus room between the garage and the main section of the house that I have been using as a piano showroom until we get the new barn done. And I got a little carried away with the primer coat, and it kind of rolled over that profile there on the edge, so I had to scrape that out. And I'll paint a couple more coats of the primer on there. Yeah, the music rack. So actually, after I got done with this, I sprayed it with a top coat, and then it started bubbling up on me. So I actually had to refinish it again, which always stinks. But so here I'm spraying. All these screws are brass on the long hinge, and the clear coat I use is specifically made for brass, so it doesn't yellow over time. Put the lid back together, all the rubber bumpers back in. And one thing I don't think I got on camera was when the piano came in, you would lift the lid and you would lift the lid prop to meet the lid. The lid prop wasn't lining up with that little cup on the left. So I had to shimmy over the lid prop with some shims so it meets up right with the cup. I see that a lot. Also, the music rack was kind of hanging back a little too far. It looked like it was reclining. It was tired, so I had to do some shimming of that hinge or those hinges to make sure the music rack looks at at an appropriate angle to hold the music up. And I go to screw this down, and all these screws are loose. Like, you just tighten them, and they just keep turning. So I had to take it back out and put some wood, like hardwood, little shims in there, and glue those in, and then re-glue it down. And then put the rubber bumpers on top. There's my little T. Put 33 screws there on the top. Oh, here I'm shimming over the lid prop. You can't really tell what I'm doing. And then 33 more screws in the bottom. Play a little bit. And an important factor is that the music desk should glide in smoothly. It shouldn't, you shouldn't have to really bear on it to get it to move back and forth. I come across a lot of pianos where they're just stuck. So there's just a lot of fitting things that you can't ignore. right, now I finally get to play the piano. Getting this back under my fingers again. Forgot how hard it is. Just kind of right in the middle of Rachmaninoff's, the first movement of his second concerto. Yeah, my hands really aren't big enough for this. Monster sound, especially in the bass. I mean, it's just a never-ending, powerful bass. If you give it more, it'll give you more. A lot of the, like the German pianos, it's just got a limit. You know, if you ever played a Broadman, I mean, I know that's made in China, a high-loom, a Siler. Those are some that come to mind that you're playing louder, you want more, but it's just not giving you more. And I found the pianos with the Adirondack spruce soundboards, they'll always give you what you ask for. Recording isn't really picking up on is the lush sustain. So you're getting a lot of the attack of the note, but you're not hearing the follow, you know, the sustain after it. So it plays like a brand new piano. It doesn't play like a rebuilt piano, meaning it feels like a new. It's got some resistance to it, so you can reliably play softly and mezzo piano. You can make a distinction between all the different dynamic levels. I'll play the horn line too. If I was smart, I could have played the orchestral reduction. I'll do that next time. Together. Yeah, the tuned rear duplex really adds a lot to the tone, to the tonal structure. It just gives you this shimmery effect. It sounds kind of like a reverb. Installed in the piano. it's got an action where you just, once you start playing it, you don't want to stop. Hopefully you've experienced that feeling before. If you either have a nice piano or have been to a showroom or something, where there's a piano on the stage, that's nice, but it just, the feeling of it is so nice that like you just don't want to stop, and it just draws you to it. It just keeps you at the piano, you know. When I walk by it, I just want to, you know, I'm gravitated toward it. I just want to touch a few keys. I feel sorry for the clarinet player that has to play that. I feel like it could trip you up real easily. Pedals are real smooth, especially the left pedal. It's not like sticky or hard to press down. I'll just skip around the parts so I can still play. ever played a piano, whether an upright or grand, and get to the bass, play a few bass notes, and there's one note that sounds really, really good. They're like, and you play the other ones, like, man, I wish the other ones would sound like this one. Well, this piano, every note sounds really, really good. I don't know how to put it. All the bass notes have this tone to it that's singing and dark, and I really like it. Check to make sure we're still recording. Should probably check the score and some of these rhythms. It's been so long since I've actually looked at the score while I'm playing it. Thing about really nice pianos and recording on really nice pianos is there's nowhere to hide. Sometimes if you're playing an old kind of janky piano, you can get away with a few things. This stuff sounds pretty good, but you've got the microphones, right up on the piano, and it's got to be perfectly in tune, and you can't miss any notes. Or else it's super obvious. It's like going from the practice room, in college, to playing on the stage. Practice room piano might be out of tune and not the best working, and then you get to the Steinway on the stage. Bosendorfer, we had one of both at my college. And just like the space between the intervals seems farther apart because A, it's in tune. So there's just less wiggle room for any mistakes. Cut out right at the end of this, so I had to splice in some other audio. But I just put some pictures of the piano with it. Yeah, see a little bit of vibrato on that low D flat there. Thanks for watching.